collaborating with others. We also have had a number of guest speakers, and Christina, who's here today, was actually one of our guest speakers at a session last year. And we have produced a number of different resources, and we're in the middle of producing a special issue of the Irish Journal of Technology Enhanced Learning. And that's going to be
Lisa,
all about portfolio. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. Yeah, recording is on. Great, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christina, for keeping us on the straight and narrow. So that's just a little bit about me. I've lived and breathed ePortfolio for the last 4 years. So happy to take any questions as I go through this. Just fire them into the chat box, and hopefully I'll be able to keep an eye on them. But to talk about where. No, actually, I won't keep an eye on them, because what that will do is actually knock off my share screen. So I will perhaps come to them at the end. What I want to do really is, if we're to talk about where we are now, is talk about really where we came from. And ePortfolios have been around, or portfolios have been around for an awful long time. Concept going all the way back to Renaissance Italy, where, as you can see from the background, artists and architects kept all their work, or collated all of the examples of their work in a folio. And if you're interested actually in the history of ePortfolio, a colleague of mine, Orna Farrell, published this article that I pulled this quote from last year, and it's been widely tweeted and retweeted on Twitter, so it's definitely worth having a read of. So that's where portfolios came from, or originated, and kind of where we have moved to really. ePortfolios made their small scale debut in education in the 1990s, particularly in the US, closely followed by Australia and New Zealand. The first disciplines that adopted ePortfolio were education and nursing, and they would still be the disciplines that we would see most commonly use ePortfolio today. But you can see I've just kind of included quotes from different articles over the years. So we worry that ePortfolios have become a fad. Well, in '97, perhaps they worried about that, but now it's not a fad. I think that they have stood the test of time. So you can see from the worry that they were a fad to becoming an integral part of the learning landscape, ePortfolios have really bedded in education. So they began to make inroads in education, as you can see, over those 20 years. And by the mid 2010s, you can see that portfolios, or ePortfolios, seem to have taken on a lease of life within education. In 2011, the peer-reviewed journal, the Irish Journal of ePortfolio, was first published, and this really helped developing a literature base around ePortfolio. And then in 2018, George Koo and the Association for American Colleges and Universities, the AAC&U, they added ePortfolio as a high impact practice. They had 10 high impact practices, and they added ePortfolio as an 11th. So a high impact practice is something that can be seen to affect enhanced student learning and success. So that all looked really great for ePortfolios, and then we are where we are now, and COVID struck this year. So it's had an incredible impact in so many ways, but definitely on education, with the closure of schools and the movement of education online and the recognition of a need for alternative assessments. So what I just wanted to do is share with you, and I think in a visual way, the impact of COVID on education. Oh, if you watch this map, and I just took a quick video of me going through this map, because it's actually quite long if you watch it play in full, so I skipped forward through some of it for you. If you just watch out for the purple areas and keep an eye on the dates, it's incredible the impact that that COVID has had on us. Most of the world closed, just closed. Then we had a break. And while we are open, we're really only partially open still in education. So, I mean, obviously, COVID has had impacts far and beyond education, but just to put where we are now in context, I just wanted to share that with you. And as part of that then, there was a scramble for finding alternative assessments. And many different institutions and organizations started proffering different or alternative approaches to assessment, because we could not in safety guarantee the running of face-to-face examinations. So as you saw on screen, there were a couple of those institutions, DCU being one, but also the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching and Learning. They all put forward alternative assessment methodologies. And ePortfolio was one of those proposed by a large number of these institutions, and certainly within DCU. And that for us in DCU has triggered a huge uptake over the last 9 months in the use of ePortfolio, and specifically ePortfolio based assessment. So effectively the pandemic was really the tipping point for us with regards to ePortfolio practice. I mentioned this during the summer, and I'm seeing it even more so now as we're well into towards the end of semester one. And we are pretty much within DCU approaching ePortfolio at scale now, where in Ireland we're very much, I suppose, just at the start of an ePortfolio journey, where the United States and New Zealand and Australia in particular would have, and the literature says approximately 50% of students in the US have an ePortfolio. We're not anywhere near those numbers. And a recent study that we did for ePortfolio Ireland showed that there's only 1 or 2 institutions that actually have an institutional ePortfolio rollout. So we're very much at the beginning stages. But let me share a little bit about the DCU experience with you. So I'm just going to let these play on screen as I chat through. These are some examples of ePortfolios that students have allowed us to share with you and with others. So we introduced ePortfolio in DCU in 2016, and it serves a range of purposes, from reflection to assessment, and also for extracurricular and work placement activities. The platform that we use is Mahara, which is an open source platform. We have renamed it internally to be Loop Reflect. So both lecturers and students over that time have benefited from the ability of ePortfolio to showcase or to hold and collate materials in text form, in image form, in video, and in so many different ways. And the students appreciate the flexibility and the creativity that has given to them, and allowed them to create a showcase of their skills and their experiences for their tutors, but also more broadly, and where we're going to be focusing on going forward, is that ePortfolio can be used for employability purposes as well. So for that reason, we give in DCU all of our students an ePortfolio for life. So even after they graduate, they can maintain and continue to develop their ePortfolio. So what we've seen in practice is that digital skills have been greatly enhanced by both students and our staff. And this particular academic year saw, as I said, a huge increase in numbers. On average, we had about 30 different modules that would be actively using ePortfolio for assessment or for placement in any given semester. From 30, that has jumped to 140 this term. So it's been a considerable roller coaster, shall we say, to roll out and support that for many, many thousands of staff and students over the last number of weeks. so that'll just give you a little bit of background to where we are in DCU. So to kind of backtrack a little bit, we've looked a little bit at the evolution of ePortfolios. We've looked at what's happened to us in our current situation. But just to, and I know Kristen shared a definition with you, but just to go back to what really is an ePortfolio, if you are not familiar and not currently using an ePortfolio. This is a nice definition by Einan Clark, because I feel this. I feel that ePortfolios are dynamic, they are innovative, and they're a really powerful medium for recording, reflecting on, and showcasing student learning. And we're particularly finding it very useful around the reflection space, as well as the assessment space, and often the two are intertwined. And that intertwining actually is both a benefit and a downfall, a benefit and a weakness of ePortfolio, because its great flexibility causes sometimes a little bit of confusion as to what is it and what is its actual natural purpose. Because there's often a dichotomy between a product portfolio and a process-based portfolio. So it can be used purely as a mechanism for individual reflection and never shared with anybody. It can be used to document reflecting on learning a concept or topic or as part of a project, or it can be used as more of a showcase or product portfolio if you, for example, need to seek registration with a professional body. So, for example, in New Zealand, nurses are required, new nurses are required to maintain an ePortfolio. The Pharmaceutical Society here in Ireland, they require their members to maintain an ePortfolio for their ongoing CPD. So that would definitely be a showcase portfolio. So often there's that tension between them. So often, if you're thinking about ePortfolio, think about the purpose, think about the why you are actually introducing ePortfolio. But regardless of purpose, and I just want to show you just a couple of quick examples before I move on to the actual benefits. So here is an example of a student, again, who's given me permission to show her ePortfolio to you today. So she's a business student, and she was asked to just reflect on one particular aspect of the activities that were provided as part of the module, which was attendance at a hackathon. So again, you can see that she has used a variety of media here to demonstrate her thinking and her reflection around this. And this is another example, and this is, again, the same student talking through further just to show different mediums. She's now using video, and how the experience has changed her, what she thinks, and how to link it to, in this case, previous reading or knowledge, and oftentimes to other concepts as well as to literature. So she's using this in a very reflective way. But as a lecturer, ePortfolio can also be very useful. So this is an example that a colleague of mine allowed me to share with you. And what she does with her ePortfolio, and this is purely for her own consumption, apart from today, we all attend so many CPD events, particularly over the last 9 months, as we all scramble to gain new digital skills and online pedagogies so that we could continue to teach at a distance. So what she does is when she attends these workshops, she writes a reflection so she doesn't forget. And she links them then back to the learning outcomes of that particular module and links it forward to what she might do having attended and learned about this particular topic. So I think that's a really valuable way of using ePortfolio as well, that might be hidden, that you mightn't often see. And there's part 2, the bottom part of that page, and you can see that she's put actions, specific actions, into that reflective space for herself. And then you can have the opposite. Then you can have a showcase. Showcase ePortfolio. Now, this student didn't even need to use it as part of assessment, but all our students have an ePortfolio that they're able to use for their own purposes. So he put it to use to showcase his final year project, because as you can see here, rather than saying, well, I made a 3D printed prosthetic arm, if he's wanting to showcase or share what he has done as part of his final project, perhaps to put on his CV or his LinkedIn profile, having a link to a page where he can showcase a video of said prosthetic arm will be far more effective or impactful than just being able to just talking about it. So developmental or showcase this, and often there's some that will meet in the middle. So think about what is the purpose of introducing ePortfolio in your own context. But as I said, regardless of the purpose, there is consensus across the literature about the benefits of ePortfolio. So improved reflective skills, because it does give you a time and space to do it. Our own students have commented in feedback that maintaining an ePortfolio over time allows you to see your growth, make visible your growth, which is really powerful. Making those connections across concepts is something that has Catalyst in Action, which is a book I contributed to by Einan and Gambino. They really focus on that as well, and how ePortfolio can make those connections. And I'm going to carry on that metaphor a little bit later on. As you saw, it's an excellent showcase, but it also allows students to be creative and to create their own online identities as they wish and through mediums that they wish. And that has been really effective, even from an assessment point of view in DCU, where one lecturer commented to me that he had a student that wouldn't necessarily have performed well in a written assessment activity, but that student performed extremely well in an ePortfolio based activity where they were allowed the space to personalize what it was that they used to demonstrate their understanding of a topic. And of course, we're all gaining digital skills, but pretty much every day now, but the ePortfolio will again allow that and support that. So continuing on that connections theme and making connections theme, I think now it's a really important time and space for ePortfolio, because we are remote. We're remote from our campus, we're remote from our students, we're remote, and the students are remote from each other, and they're remote from their learning. So ePortfolio, I feel, has a place, has a place to play here. So what I want to do is just take a couple of examples in how ePortfolio might be able to help maintain or create those connections for our students. And this is a pretty sad slide. I don't mean to be so negative, but I actually asked my son, who's a new incoming first year student, and he's obviously studying remotely. And I asked him to give me a word to describe how students are feeling right now. And that's what he came up with. He came up with alone. I perhaps would have come up with remote. Alone is stark, but if that's how students are feeling, then that's worth, you know, playing around with. So they're at a distance from their desired learning experience. This is not how anybody wanted to go to college. This is not how anybody wants to learn. They're remote from their peers. They're remote from their teachers. They're often barely keeping their heads above water with trying to learn without the usual physical and social structures that they might have access to. So I'm proposing that ePortfolio might be a platform that can help maintain or develop those connections to mitigate that educational isolation. So when I'm talking about connecting, I'm talking about it from a number of perspectives. I'm just moving your lovely faces across the screen so I can actually see my slides. So I suppose what I want to focus on is that ePortfolio isn't just a technology, it's a practice. And it has potential because it gives agency back to students. If you are brave, if lecturers are brave enough, and it requires a leap of faith, but allows students the flexibility to engage with the learning materials and to show their understanding of those learning materials in their own way through a medium that works for them. And it allows them then to creatively assimilate themselves and make sense of those connections themselves. They can connect to the course content and to the learning more easily if they're assembling that knowledge themselves through different media in their own space. And ePortfolios in general have been seen to foster a deeper engagement. So Tosh, Pennylight, Fleming and Haywood back in 2005, that's what they were looking at and how ePortfolio can foster that engagement. ePortfolio gives you that online space and time for reflection. And because you can revisit ePortfolios, and because, again, depending on how the lecturer has designed the assessment, and we're all redesigning our assessments currently, it can allow for the time and the space to continually come back, reflect on, and improve on what their understanding is of a topic. I mentioned enhanced digital skills. It can be difficult, particularly for incoming first-year students who are trying to get to grips with a learning management system that they've never seen before, with a way of teaching and learning that they're not familiar with, and now we're giving them another platform to work with. But certainly from our perspective in DCU, Mahara has become very user-friendly over the years, and the learning curve is short. And the benefits of giving them that online space far outweigh any bumps along that learning curve. So digital skills for the students are being enhanced. Their critical thinking skills are being enhanced because they need to decide what are the artifacts, what are the pieces that they pull together to represent their understanding. So it takes a leap of faith, as I said. You need to trust your students to demonstrate their learning in their own way, and that speaks to academic integrity. You're allowing them flexibility of expression, and again, that speaks to universal design for learning. So ePortfolio can greatly enhance students' overall connection to their learning and has been seen to improve student success. A study by Einan, Gambino and Torek in 2014 showed that students who engage with ePortfolio had higher grades. Well, now at a time when students are remote, giving them a tool that can enhance their learning, I think is probably a very important thing that we can do for them. So just another example, as you can see on screen, I'm just providing some of the sample templates that have been given to our students to demonstrate how they've been allowed to decide themselves how they represent their learning. So in this particular example, they can include images and or videos and or as many as they want. They've been given some reflective prompts, but they have been allowed then to enhance their ePortfolio page in any way that best suits their understanding of a concept or topic. And this was a particularly nice example, and this is from a communications module. And I really like the ways of seeing and ways of re-seeing. I like it as a topic, but I love the way the students really have complete flexibility around how they demonstrate that. Look at your existing photos, choose one, any one, upload it to Reflect. They're given prompts, but otherwise they can portray their understanding or take on that particular question for the assessment in any way they want. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sally Brown. She's a UK educator who has more energy in her retirement than most of us have when we are in the prime of our youth. She's an incredible educator. I'm actually sharing a panel with her in a week or so. But what she did, she's a really powerful advocate for assessment and making assessment authentic. And that's why I wanted to share this example with you. We are at the moment in a space where we can't really deliver online exam or face-to-face examinations. Online examinations and proctoring, there's an awful lot of discussion and negativity, certainly around proctoring. But what Sally suggests is expanding on what would have been a typical exam question. And you can see on screen the exam question on the left, her reimagining of it on the right. Now, she did not reimagine this with an ePortfolio in mind. But if you just take a moment and just read through the piece on the right, you will see that the students are tasked with a much more engaging, creative activity that will deepen their learning far more so than answering an exam question. And this I particularly love because this would be so well suited for ePortfolio. So really what I'm saying here is allow your students to be innovative. To do that, you need to be innovative too when it comes to assessment. But allow your students different and varied ways where they can connect to their learning, particularly when they're remote from you. Just checking my time. I have time. Yeah. So the students are disconnected or alone or remote or whatever word you want to use. But so are the teachers. And certainly from conversations that I've had with colleagues over the last while, it's been hard. It's been a hard road trying to teach at a distance. It's hard because more often than not, we're looking at little black boxes. And that's very difficult to build connections with students. But I think ePortfolio is one of those tools that can help build those personal connections. So we've looked at connecting to the learning and the content, but it can also build those personal connections between students and personal connections between student and teacher. So ePortfolios and certainly the Mahara ePortfolio are designed to be shared. And Mahara enables comments to be left on student ePortfolios. So you can see what other peers are understanding from a lecture or from an assessment. Yes, you can use discussion forums for connection. That's pure text. Whereas if you can share ePortfolios, then that makes for more of a personal connection. One example in DCU was in a geography module, and that's where this is taken from. And students were asked to reflect. They were given a couple of prompts, but they could reflect in any which way. They could choose any artifacts they wanted, but to reflect on any 6 of 11 lectures that they got over the course of the semester. Part of the assignment was that they would also then share that reflection with 3 other students. So not only then did students have their own reflection, take the time to think about the lecture and write their own reflection, then they also got to see 3 other takes, 3 other viewpoints of that same lecture. What our students found and with the feedback from that particular module was that they gained a much greater understanding and that exams were easy. So this was last year, but exams then were easy because they'd gotten their lecturer's take on the topic or a concept, their take on a topic or concept, and then their peers' take on a topic or concept. But in this case, given that we're remote, it gives the students an opportunity to connect with one another. So ePortfolio can support those sharing of experiences, and group work can be an important aspect of that. Again, ePortfolios support, just like a Google Doc, they support group pages where students can work together and again make those connections. And consider when you're doing assessments, if you're surrounded by a sea of black boxes when you lecture, as part of an assessment, if you're using ePortfolio, you may consider a small introduction or an About Me section, which is what a lot of our lecturers do. That will allow you to gain some kind of window into the world of the students. At least perhaps a picture of what they look like if all you're seeing is a black box. Maybe a little bit about their interests and their backgrounds. So ePortfolios can make those connections. And just, there's our black boxes. I couldn't find student pictures. I went with dogs. But there's an example of an About Me section. It's very straightforward. Just a picture, a little bit about me. Just blanked out the student name. But you know, those small things can help me build those connections between students and between student and teacher. I mentioned group work and group pages. This is an example in a psychology module that's happening right now. So we've made a number of group pages. Every student then has this template that they can work on. They can work on together like a Google Doc. But unlike a Google Doc, they have greater flexibility about how they design it, how they share it, the types of media that they use, and then it can be submitted as an assignment. So there's huge flexibility there. But this I think is pretty relevant, and I would take a show of hands on this one. The pandemic is dragging on and professors are burning out. Is anybody feeling that right now? Because I certainly am, and I certainly know that the lecturers that I connect with on a daily basis are literally dragging their way to the end of term. We were mostly burnt out before we even started term, as we tried to prepare so many different online materials and alternative assessments and new ways of teaching. So I think we're all struggling. We're all struggling just that little bit. So that's why I want to share this with you, because I think it's lovely. Just take a moment and read through that. That's one of my lecturers in DCU. And he gave himself joy. Has anyone ever referred to assessments as a joy? I can't imagine many do. Certainly not when you're faced with 100, 200 or 300 to assess. But what this lecturer did is he switched out his traditional essay to be an ePortfolio based assignment. And because they were so engaging, the students engaged with them. They were each so creative and so different. It brought him joy to see it and to correct it. So at this time, when we're all burning out, what I would say to you is give yourself joy, and do consider perhaps ePortfolio might be the medium to do that. And just to finish off on the connections, connecting to your professional self. What I've shared there is my professional portfolio, and I mostly keep it up to date, mostly. But I think it's a really valuable exercise. And I have to say, to put it in COVID times and COVID context, everybody across the board has gained new skills in online pedagogy. Everybody has gained new skills in digital technologies. So yes, we are tired. Yes, we're possibly burnt out, but now is the time to document for yourself those skills so you can see your own growth over this period. So you create a window to your skills and experiences, which, looking forward to better times and vaccines in 2021, may allow for you to map that against perhaps a CPD framework, perhaps advance HE or another, gain a professional recognition from it. Or perhaps it can be used for promotions or for employability purposes. But create that space for yourself as well to make a connection from what you're doing right now and create a professional portfolio. So looking forward, I've spoken about the different connections. I'm not saying ePortfolio is a magic bullet. What we're doing right now, teaching and learning through a pandemic, it's hard work. It's very hard work. And fundamentally it is, and all teaching and learning is making those connections, creating those relationships, and working with students so that they can learn and engage with their learning. But hopefully you've seen a couple of examples there where you can see that ePortfolio can support that process. It may not be the magic bullet, but it can certainly play a part. And I think I am bang on time. So thank you for listening to me, and I'm more than happy to take any questions that you might have. And I'll have a look through the chat box, or if somebody can call me out what's in the chat box.
Lisa, thank you so much. That was just wonderful. You know, the cliche of inspiring, but it definitely applies to you. Yes, because like food for thought. There were two questions I put down from the chat, but I think just overall, it's so interesting to actually go back to the history of ePortfolio and see where they're coming from. That's always enriching. And then, you know, again, I have kids in education, and this alone is a huge problem. So to actually see the benefits, the connection to learning what you're saying, the connection to each other, it's so vital in these mad times because they're all suffering. You know, it shouldn't be a fate on your own. You shouldn't be, you know, solo when you're going to university.
No,
and here we are.
It's not the natural state for students.
Yeah.
So particularly for incoming first years. And again, I see that in the chat. I think we all have great sympathy for incoming first years. This isn't the experience they signed up for. This isn't the experience that we had and that we would want for our students. So anything that can keep them connected to us and to their learning, I think should be considered in this space. I know from personally looking at my poor first year Trinity student, he's really struggling.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see a lot of first years and perhaps a lot of dropout. If not, well, hopefully with a vaccine and we get a little bit more on campus.
That's a magic word.
Yeah,
magic word.
Mitigate that, but it's very hard now. Particularly, and I've seen it in DCU both pre-COVID and during COVID, that they're crying out. Students are crying out for some way to connect with one another, and ePortfolio at least is a mechanism where they can talk to one another, even if it is via text, through comments or feedback, peer assessment, peer feedback, get the students involved in the learning. That works extremely well with ePortfolio, certainly with our instance of Mahara. So peer review and peer feedback can create that engagement with each other as well as engagement with the course content itself. And there was a question there about group work. Yeah, the group work, we're really only kind of newly trying that out this semester. So I'm really interested myself to see how that works. We've used groups on a professional basis within the portfolio for different projects, and that's working quite well. So as opposed to using a learning management system to share information, we're using the ePortfolio platform because it has an inbuilt discussion forum, because it has inbuilt pages that we can all collaborate on, and that is working very well. So I will come back to you on how the group work is working for students, because really it's only the first semester that we are seeing Reflect or ePortfolio pages in our instance being used to support that group work. So we did see it in one other nursing module previously, and that was actually for a partly online or blended program. It did work well then. It was mainly text-based, so I don't think students really took advantage of the affordances of ePortfolio to be creative with their work. I'd like to think that that will progress over time the more familiar they become with the platform.
Lisa, there were also, if you look up in the chat earlier on, there was a question by Vanessa, which was this whole idea of sharing assessments across subjects. Now, I know in LEAP, Anne-Marie, correct me, but I know in LEAP it's all possible. You just need to make sure you connect all the assessors you want, and then you can share. Have shared assessments. That was one from Vanessa, and then Nolene had a question on a rubric. So maybe if I may ask Vanessa and Nolene to come in and discuss their questions, please.
Thanks, Kristen. That was great. You've answered mine. I think it's something that's come up for us before, to reduce the number of assessments that students are doing overall, and to address maybe the compartmentalization of different subjects, you know, like to bring them together for their discipline. So that was where I was kind of coming from on that. Like, if it was, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of, as you say, bring the learning objectives from different modules into the one piece. Yeah. Excuse me. Because I do have a question for Lisa, but I can come back later if you want me to.
No, go ahead.
Thank you. Loving everything, like, from where you're coming from. And I've two sort of kind of areas, so I don't want to take up too much time, but the identity of the portfolio in terms of students' stress level when it comes to assignments. What do you want from me? What do you want from my life? You know, is there what you want me to put on the page? Tell me what you want and I'll do that. And I've seen it time and time again where I'm trying to move away from that in allowing them to do assessments by tweet, by phone video, by, you know, short movies, these kind of things. As long as they're addressing the kind of objectives, I want to open the way they do it.
Yes.
But what's come back is that they can get quite stressed saying, look, what's the template? What do I put under what heading? And I think the portfolio, the brilliance of it is that it hands that back over to them. And as you rightly said then, that can also be a stressor because they're not simply not used to it. We don't have a culture of that.
Yeah. So any new platform is going to be a bit of a shock to the system to students, and we've certainly found that. So incoming first years, particularly this year, normally I'd have a face-to-face with them, and I'd give them an overview of the portfolio. Every incoming student will get an overview of it at orientation. So at least when their lecturer mentions it, they've heard of it.
It's not new. It's not what.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you from that perspective. We're very lucky in that I think that the learning curve is very short in our ePortfolio. But what we have done to mitigate that even is that we've actually engaged students who are interested, who have used the ePortfolio before to be student interns, and they support the students as well as me. We have a very, very comprehensive support page with text-based instructions and video-based instructions for everything that they'll ever need to do. We have a number of sample portfolios on that page. So if a lecturer says, create an ePortfolio, and the student goes, I don't even know what an ePortfolio is. Then they can go and they can have a look at a couple of examples that our students have given us permission to share. And beyond that, when it comes to particularly new cohorts using ePortfolio, once a student has used this once, there are no more problems. So I will generally do an introduction, nowadays it's online, for those students through Zoom. And I definitely recommend for new cohorts coming to ePortfolio some form of a template, even if it's a very loose template, rather than presenting them with a blank page.
Completely blank. I think that's wonderful. I think you've covered all the hub of information where they can see it in different formats and templates and everything. That's brilliant altogether. Thank you so much. And just kind of relevant to what you were saying with the students not knowing, or rather what is saying, tell me what you want.
We developed a rubric as part of ePortfolio Ireland. So there's a number of ePortfolio rubrics out there. And they're all very good, but none of them were perfect. So a group of us in a room at a meeting nearly 2 years ago now, we looked at across all the different rubrics and we designed or created our own based on the best of each of them.
Brilliant.
And that rubric is available for everybody on the ePortfolio Ireland website.
Okay.
And what we do recommend is that the students are shown that rubric. So it's almost a guide for them as to what is expected of them.
And that's a brilliant way of doing the feedback. I get them to use the same rubric and grade their piece. I grade it and then we discuss. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem at all.
Thank you, Lisa, for answering, Vanessa. So we have one happy bouncing participants. Can I just comment, maybe you also answered already Nolin's one, and Christina had also posted a question in the chat about the top tips for implementing portfolio in the current situation. So again, maybe just to keep these two questions in mind, but maybe if I go back to Nolin first. Nolin, more questions on the rubric, please. You have to unmute yourself.
Now she's unmuted, but we can't hear her.
Oh, that's a bit of a bummer.
Yes.
Okay, it's because I was on the headset. So yeah, what my question was, just if it's a moderation across different subjects, you know, and I think you've explained it really, that there is a system-wide, you know, and I suppose from the institute point of view, I'd be looking at, say, from our own institute point of view, some of us are using ePortfolios, but there isn't a widespread use of it across all the different subjects. So from student point of view, you know, and I suppose everybody has the autonomy to create it and create their own rubric, but you know, from, I think, moving forward for students to, like you have in DCU, an understanding of what would be expected of them if they're using an ePortfolio, and for lecturers creating one's assessments through that medium in the future as well, that they're clear on what their own rubric is. And then the second part of what I was asking was actually, are they linked to 21st century graduate skills? Because I suppose we were looking at like say the National Council for Youth in Ireland, they have created an ePortfolio template which is used with youth workers, and I suppose young people coming through, you know, through maybe being exposed to youth work will be aware perhaps into the future, you know, as we move forward now that that's being rolled out. So is there an understanding of that? Or?
Yes and no is the answer to that. One of the big drivers for implementing ePortfolio and DCU was our graduate attributes, which would be very close to 21st century skills. Unfortunately, whilst those graduate attributes really should be embedded in the curriculum and should be lived through the teaching and delivery of course content, we're not really seeing that to, I think, as great a degree as we would have anticipated. So actually what's happening is that our current graduate attributes and that whole idea of graduate attributes is being revamped at the moment. And I think at that point, when we do have a full set of grad attributes that we can speak to and we can live through, then I think you'll see that being included, certainly as embedded in the learning outcomes of all of our programs and flowing down into modules, and therefore you will see those attributes living through an ePortfolio. So what the students can currently do, but as I say, it's not really happening to a great degree at the moment, is that our students can tag pages. We've put the graduate attributes in as tags across the whole system. So as a student is writing up maybe a particular assignment or a work placement or engaging in an extracurricular activity, they can tag that page where they're documenting what they're doing with a graduate attribute. So that ostensibly, yes, what they could do is then click a button and create a page with all of the examples of their experiences with or as a graduate with these attributes. So that's how it should work.
Noreen, happy with that? That's the answer? Yeah? Okay. Then I go on to Christina. Please, Christina, I'm copying all your lovely links you're sharing with us and will then have in my follow-up email shot. But do you want to come back to your question, Christina, please?
I think I may have answered, Christina, but there you are.
Sure, yes. Yes, I think Lisa actually already did, because I asked whether she had, or whether she can share one top tip, or if she can't really narrow it down, Lisa, if you can, 3 of your top tips of what to look out for when implementing a portfolio in our current situation. And you did mention the templates, for example. So yes, I think you already answered it, but if you can think of anything else that you could share, that would be wonderful.
Just to make sure. Yes, good.
To be honest, it's support, and more support, because never have the students needed it more. Never has my phone been buzzing at 11 o'clock as often. And I won't let a student, have a sleepless night because they don't understand how to pull a video onto their assignment, which is due at 9 o'clock the next morning. So it is support, really, because particularly now, when everyone is remote, to humanize that experience, and to be helpful. It's just to be helpful. It's a pedagogy of care, really, that I think we're all responsible for at the moment. And I definitely take that very seriously, even if it is 11 o'clock at night when I'm responding to a student email. But you know what? The amount of emails that I've gotten back going, thank you so much. That was, it really helped me. And that's what it's all about. So I think support is the key point, because this is a new platform for a lot of people. And even if you are familiar, sometimes you still need support. So knowing that there's somebody there.
Yeah, it's a bit like, what we used to do, have a chat with a student after the lecture or the tutorial, and then you feel, yes, great, yeah, that the student actually dared to ask that question, and we had the chat, and he or she is all sorted, and that kind of feeling of, yeah, but it's so much harder. Yeah. So yeah. Absolutely. But it's so important, support. On that point, what I also liked very much, and thank you again, Christina, because you sent the link, that bit to acknowledge, of course, we all are dedicated to education and our students, and we acknowledging the fate that students are currently experiencing, which is being alone. All right. But I think equally, sometimes we forget to mind ourselves. Okay. And it was actually so nice and refreshing and sweet to hear. Well, equally, the lecturers are disconnected and alone and need support, and that burnout, to acknowledge, that we just for mentally, staying sane, we need a break, because there is, what you call, rightly so, a burnout. So again, it's so important to have that voice, to have that mentioned, Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I've felt it myself. Certainly felt it myself. Never ever been so close to the edge in my professional career. It's hard. It's hard during these times, and that's regardless of, what's going on outside people's professional lives. There could be loss, there could be illness, there could be so many things going on, but there's certainly isolation, and that we all have that in common. And certainly there's a huge amount of work involved in developing and moving suddenly to an online context, learning new pedagogies, creating new materials, supporting students who are at sea. So yeah, that pedagogy of care to our students is crucial, but also extends to ourselves. So for example, in DCU, one of our colleagues is working on a digital well-being workshop for us, just for us. And I'm sitting here with some of the things in a little care pack that came to us. So clear your mind, pulse oil, and lip balms, and it's the small things that you can do to keep yourself going, because you can't fill from an empty pail, isn't that the expression?
Absolutely. And equally, I thought, that was so important to mention, and it all rings a bell, and you can see it. It's the workload has so much increased. There's so little time for anything else. But you had that positive note, because that lecture would actually evaluate an assessment as joy and puts the two words in one sentence.
I love that. Where do you find joy, actual joy, in this context? And he gave a presentation and spoke about his ePortfolio experience in May, so in the middle of all of this. And all of us are drowning with alternative assessments, and he's talking about the joy that he got from his ePortfolio based assessment. I had to capture that, because it's very difficult to find joy in a lot of places, but to actually manage to have created it through a learning activity, that's amazing.
Yeah. And again, the bit of, take it in a positive way. We're all learning, because we have to. So there's no choice, but we are all incredibly, progressing, learning, increasing our skills. We still have 2-3 minutes before we have the next coffee break. Any more questions, please?
Could I come in again, please, Lisa? Yeah. Vanessa, I'm bugging you now.
No, you're not.
The identity part, is it a learning for or of assessment, this sort of summative, formative debate and everything? I come kind of more from a teaching methodology, sort of like strategies rather than content. So like Montessori training was initially sort of where I came from. And bringing that sort of then into the digital forum is kind of where I'm wanting to move things. So it's identity of both from the student's point of view. Is it too difficult to have a showcase and run another one? Or can you keep them, kind of have, because it's such a great platform.
Oh, it is.
Teaching them how to do it, but then also walking them through that it does have different identities and different ways of seeing your learning.
See, that will depend on your ePortfolio platform a lot, but it'll also depend on the types of activities that you set for your students. So our students, with Mahara, you can have any number of ePortfolios. So you can have any number of pages, and then you can recombine those pages in any way that you wish.
Oh, fab.
So the about me, the identity, that who I am as a teacher, and that actually, back in the day, I was a Montessori teacher too as well. But that identity piece can very well be done on a page, which can be brought into a showcase portfolio and added to experiences or
Well, that's great flexibility.
So it absolutely depends on the platform and depends on how you use it. But I definitely think it has the benefits of both.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. Great.
Excellent. Any more questions before we take our second break? And then Anne-Marie will be our second guest speaker.
Thank you. Anybody?
Yeah. Lisa, we do that bit. Yay! As I said, it was just wonderful that you had the time and were willing to join us and be our guest speaker. So and I hope again connections are made today. That we stay.
Absolutely. I will share this presentation so that everyone has my contact details. I'd encourage you to join ePortfolio Ireland. I say join, there's no joining fee or anything, but just have a look at the website and just see our next event is in February. So if you want to connect with other people using ePortfolio, again, a little bit like this, just to share ideas. then you're more than welcome to our next event, which is all about a create-a-thon for assessment and how you might create your own ePortfolio-based assessments.
Super, super duper. Thank you so much, Lisa. Very refreshing and so true to what's happening all around us at the moment. So it was so inspiring. Thank you so much. I know, what did you say? You have something now with 100 participants? That's multiplied us by 10. Was it? Yeah. So thank you. We take our break.
Okay.
Yeah, and we are back then with Anne-Marie starting her presentation at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for everybody, and thank you for participating in the chat too. Thank you, Lisa.
Bye, Lisa. Bye.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye-bye.